Hey there, I'm Josh, and this week I'm going to be just joshing around customizing this Iron Giant toy. Before I jump right into customizing, I thought I'd give you a little bit of a background on why I love the Iron Giant so much, and why the movie means so much to me. The year is 1999. It's a different time, one of unity and respect, collective love and admiration, a world full of promise and hope for the future, and definitely not one where we're freaking out over a global crisis. Psych! Remember that? Anyone? Anyway, let's restart. 1999. The entertainment industry is on a hot streak. It's the golden age of music, with boy bands and pop stars blowing up the charts, and the fashion scene, while film studios are pumping out hit after hit after hit. And all the great and deserving films were being rewarded accolades over the lesser and clearly inferior ones. And it just happened to be the same time that I stopped caring about awards. It was also a technologically simpler time, one where smartphones and social media didn't yet exist, when communication was usually relegated to a phone call, maybe an email, or if you were cool, instant messenger. And it was a time when the internet was not yet full of a bunch of amateur experts who loved to do nothing less than share a constant stream of their opinions in the never-ending search for their validation through the use of a thumbs up, or a like, or maybe a retweet. And finally, it was a time when you wouldn't have been subjected to a YouTuber who's about to get all sappy and philosophical about an animated movie. It was a time that a bright-eyed, kind of misfit, dorky 15-year-old kid is taking it all in and trying to grow up, trying to change and mature his interests, trying to stop being so goofy and childish all the time and try to be cool for a change, and just generally doing his best to try to fit in. And yep, if you hadn't guessed it, that kid is me. You see, this was a formative time for me, specifically more of a conformative time. I was making a conscious effort to change my interests, to leave behind all the toys, the comics, the cartoons of my childhood, improve my interest to better things like sports, cars, romantic pursuits, upping my style game, opening a checking account, considering a career path, you know, more mature, grown-up crap. I would spend a big part of that year focusing on that stuff. Now sure, I still had somewhat of a waning interest in all that childish stuff. I had still seen some of the big sci-fi movies and still played some video games and whatnot, but the tide was turning, and I could feel it turn. Heck, I wanted it to turn. But then something happened. Late in the year, I was sitting at home alone, trying to find something to watch, and I came across a cartoon, The Iron Giant, a giant robot from outer space, and I thought, boy, this sounds stupid. I'm just gonna watch a little bit just to see how dumb it is. I ended up watching the whole thing, and then after it was over, I wanted to watch it again. I was drawn in, not only by the gorgeous animation, obviously, but also by the strong voice acting, and the sound and the music, but most of all, by the story. A bright-eyed, kind of misfit, dorky young boy named Hogarth stumbles across a gigantic robot that has crash-landed on Earth, a robot who has suffered some damage and some memory loss, no longer aware of the fact that he was, in essence, a weapon. But now, he's more like an innocent young child, learning about things for the first time. Things like the morality of life and death. And that he doesn't have to be just a weapon. He can be good, like Superman. And that, as Hogarth states, you are who you choose to be. This is the connection that I have to this movie. It spoke to me more about identity than a lot of other things could at that time. I am who I choose to be. I don't have to change myself into something I'm not. I don't have to focus solely on all those more grown-up and mature things. And I don't have to give up my childhood completely either. There's room for all of it, and there's a lot to love and enjoy. It was a pretty profound thing for a 15-year-old kid to learn. Don't be a label. Don't be a stereotype. Your interests, your hobbies, your taste in music, movies, food, whatever, doesn't define you. You are who you choose to be. Anyway, I just wanted to share why this film means so much to me, just to give some context. And I know that everything is subjective. Someone else might watch this movie and be like, what the heck is that weirdo talking about? But I honestly feel that it was providential. and at a time that I was feeling a lot of uncertainty about myself and my future, it was the exact right moment for me to see it. Or it was a coincidence and I'm just overanalyzing a children's cartoon. Either way, let's go customize the Iron Giant. For this project, I used these paints and finishes, and it took about 2 hours. Boy, I hope you didn't mind me getting all mushy there for a little bit. But I wanted to get serious for a moment, and if there are two things that I like to get serious about, it's toys and cartoons. But still, I hope it didn't come across as too pushy or heavy-handed or anything like that. I was just trying to convey how much I appreciate that movie, and why I love it so much. Anywho, as you can see, I couldn't just get started on customization without at least playing with it first. This robot's pretty sweet. We picked it up at Walmart last year when it was released pretty much out of the blue. He spent some time mixed in with my kids' other toys upstairs before making a trip down to my workbench, where he's been ever since. The first step that I'm taking is to remove all the branding on the insides of the legs. And to do that, I'm using a drum sander on the end of my rotary tool. I turned the speed down and took my time just to make sure that I didn't gouge out the plastic too much. I also spotted some branding on this little back area, so I just used a skinny little diamond burr to get rid of it. And since I already had the rotary tool out, I figured I might as well give him his iconic little bump on his head. This little grinding ball bit worked really well for that, though I had to be careful to make sure that I didn't go too far through the plastic. Once the little bump on the noggin was done, I used some fine steel wool to smooth out the debranded areas. One thing that I decided early on was that I wanted to make a little Superman shield for his chest, but I also wanted it to be easily removable, so I'm going to use some rare earth magnets. I'm going to glue one on the inside of the chest panel and have the other one on the back of the shield. And to hold the one magnet in place while the glue dries, I just fastened the other magnet on the outside of the panel. Now, to make his Superman shield, I'm going to use some modeling clay. And yes, this is the same clay that I used to help customize both the Thor and the Captain America figures. I formed it into a flat wafer shape and then used the back of a tube of silicone caulking to cut it out. It just happened to be the perfect size. I lightly pressed it into place and then formed out a thinner wafer. I cut it out once again and then used a lid off a smaller tube of silicone caulking to cut out the inner circle. This left me with the trim ring to go on the shield. Next, it was time to cut out the S, and thanks to some cute little distractions, I forgot to hit the record button when I did that. Once I got the S all cut out with the X-Acto knife, I used the carving tools to clean it up a bit. I set the S in place, and then since this is supposed to be from a junkyard, I added some damage to it just like in the movie. I then allowed his Superman shield to dry for a long period of time before cleaning it up with some sandpaper and then spray painting it with a coat of gray primer. I peeled the S back off the shield in order to make the painting of the details a little bit easier. For the inside of the shield, I combined some flat white paint with a tiny bit of yellow just to make it a cream color. And for the S, I'm using flat red mixed with a tiny bit of flat rubber, which is a really dark brown. When mixed together, it gave me more of a burgundy shade, though for some reason it looks awfully bright in the footage. For the trim ring, I'm mixing some flat navy blue with a couple drops of flat gray. In a few of the still shots, the trim ring looks more gray, but in the movie, I think it has a bluish tint, so I went with that. Next, I moved on to electronics. I had one simple goal here. I wanted to change the color of his eyes. For some reason, this figure has the green eyes when you push the button on his stomach to make him walk. But I was wanting his eyes to have the yellow glow like he has in the movie. These are the two colors that light up when I press the corresponding buttons, and this is a replacement LED that I'm going to install. It's out of an old tea light that we use for jack-o'-lanterns around Halloween. Here I'm borrowing some power from two of the three legs of the old LED to test out the new one. Basically, all I had to do was desolder the green lead from the existing LED, and then connect it to the correct leg of the new LED. Then, I piggybacked a connection off the black lead of the existing LED to the other leg of the new one. To be honest, I probably could have done this a completely different way and gotten similar results, but doing it this way gave me the exact results that I was wanting. Now, when I press the button on his stomach, it turns yellow. When I press the button on the weapon on his chest, it turns red. I drilled a small hole for the LED in a connector plate and pushed everything back together. And now, it looks perfect. Next, it was time to paint. I applied 1 coat of gray primer over the entire figure, before switching and applying 2 coats of this hammered antique pewter spray paint. I had masked off the weapon on the chest area, so now I'm just filling it all in with a silver Sharpie. This was a lot quicker and easier than using a paintbrush. Geez, it's already time for weathering. This project's going quick. I did actually water down my shoe polish mixture a little bit more than normal. This was because I didn't want the figure to look dirty exactly, I just wanted him to look a little bit more realistic. I did, however, apply some thicker, stronger shoe polish in some specific areas. Then I switched over to silver dry brushing. This was when the figure really started to come to life. It really worked well to give him a perfect brushed metal look. I concentrated a little bit more on all of the exposed creases and bends and folds and rivets, but I was very careful not to get carried away, because I was just going for realism, not as much on the damage side. And with that, this little guy was pretty much done. I love how everything turned out with this Iron Giant toy. The paint job surpassed my expectations. I really love the texture that the hammered Rust-Oleum paint adds. And I'm glad that I used the less is more approach to shoe polish this time around. And the same goes with the silver dry brushing. The stock electronics that the manufacturer added for the lights and sounds are pretty awesome, and they're definitely a nice touch. Though I do have to say that I'm very happy that I decided to change the eyes. Speaking of Superman, I love how the shield looks. I think it helped to add something really special to him. The little dent on his head actually worked out as well. Overall, I'm very pleased, and this has actually become one of my new favorite collectibles. Well, that's it for this one. I hope you guys enjoyed this video because I sure enjoyed working on it. And if you did enjoy it, please consider leaving a like below and sharing it with somebody. And if you haven't already, please consider subscribing as well. And if you have time, I have a bunch of other stuff that you might want to check out too. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.